Again. In this segment, I'm going to talk about the business cycle. I'm going to model it. I'm not going to use my writing in the sky homemade studio over there. I'm just going to use my trusty whiteboard because it's pretty simple. Miller actually covers this in a previous chapter. I think it fits well, and most authors think it fits well with economic growth. That's why we're doing it here. And the model that I'm talking about looks something like this. This should look familiar. It's in the textbook. There we go. Looks like that. And what we can use this for, well, let me explain what it is before I go into the parts of it. This is the economy growing over time. Might not look like it, but it actually is. I went through in the last video the percentage growth rates in the long term of 30 and 40-year segments for the United States. But this is kind of how the economy actually moves. It doesn't move at, 1.9% a year. It might move at 5% one year and 0.5% the next year. Those rates that we just discussed of economic growth, those are the averages. But this is how it moves, really moves over time. And so we can label parts of this. And they're pretty simple, they're pretty straightforward, as I said. Right now, or certainly in the summer of 2020, without a doubt, we have been in, I'll try to use colors to kind of convey the emotions that go with these, I think. We have been in a period like this, along here. And what would we call that? This is a recession. This is the negative GDP growth over a time period. Ours is probably very steeper than that, and indications are so is the corresponding other part. I'm going to go with red for this, for heat, because it's a heating economy. This is probably even steeper too. This is, a lot of times you hear recovery, economic recovery, but it's generally referred to as an expansion. And that's the rising part of the business cycle. This is the cycle. By the way, this is not something that is predictable. Just because it's going down doesn't mean we're going to be at the bottom soon necessarily. We don't know how far down it might go. We don't know how far up it might go. And I kind of have that tail indicating that, because look, it starts to bend there, but it just starts to grow at a lesser rate. That's how things work. No one has a crystal ball. Just because it's a cycle doesn't mean that, oh, next year it'll be this. It's not a seasonal cycle. Don't know. We don't know. On average, it's about every 10 years or so we have a recession. But that doesn't mean that in year 9 we should be bracing for recession, because it's not a cycle in that sense. And then we have the parts in between to identify. And let's see, a good color between what I have there. Oh, this is the same color. I can't go with that. No. Oh, I see. This would be good for peak. The top of the business cycle is referred to as the peak. Not too complex. And then we have when we have reached bottom, which is always the question, are we at the bottom? That's what we're questioning as this is being made right now. We have seen a rise in economic production in September of 2020 of 33% after a 32% decline, which does not get us back to even. I'm going to explain that more in the next video. It could just be a blip, and we could continue down because of the closing of businesses. It was announced this morning that England is going to be going into lockdown. And surely that means any recovery they've experienced is now probably falling again. So we'll see what happens here. But anyway, if we are indeed at the bottom, this is called, as it is in wave science, the trough. So those are the 4 parts of the business cycle. And that's kind of how things move for economic growth. But as I said at the beginning of this, there is economic growth here because through it all, if we can look back over the longer term, as we did in the last video from I think it was 1979 to 2006 or 1960 something to 2005, we can say, well, what was the average growth rate over that time period? Effectively, then what we're doing is fitting a line of best fit through this wavy model, and that's proceed as if I drew a straight line. Okay, that line of best fit, those are the numbers that were in the last video of 1.9% and 3.2%, depending on the years you chose. Now, by the way, if you chose to make this your end year, this line of best fit would be much lower. If you chose to make right here your end year, it would be much higher. This line of best fit would be much higher. So that's what I mean about whether you're watching the data that you hear about the long-term growth rate of the U.S. economy. There's some subjectivity there in your choice of how to measure that will affect what you find in the data. It's the same data, but your choice in the years will affect the outcome that you get. So this is our long-run growth rate of the economy. It's just the line of best fit through our business cycle. And our business cycle is this naturally occurring thing with these four parts. And I'll come back and we'll explore this yet further. And I think I'm going to do that on the computer and get into some real data and sort of apply this thing to what's going on now.